Okay, so real quick, I want to show you all this technique for creating animated maps. We have this project that we've been working on with the archaeology professor, and we shot a couple of different locations, and there wasn't really the original plan to put them together as one video, but it kind of looks like that's where we're headed. So I was trying to come up with an idea of how to marry these two separate pieces together, and the classic strategy of a Hollywood animated map seemed like a good technique to give a try. So I want to come up with something that would be simple and clean. I don't want it to be over the top, Indiana Jones kind of crazy. I want it to look very, tasteful and clean. And also, I was really interested in it being accurate, given that these are the recordings are about two very specific locations in the valley. I wanted the map to be accurate to those locations. So that took a little bit of puzzling, but I came up with, I think, is a pretty good idea on that. And finally, the whole thing, I've never done anything like this before, so I was trying to come up with something simple, and I think the end results worked pretty good. So let's have a look and see how that worked.
Okay, here we are in Resolve, and this is effectively the end result of what we're looking for. So we started at one of the sites for the rock art, and then we're traveling to the other site. And this is actually pretty simple to do. It looks nice, and it wasn't very hard. So let's look at how this was made. The first thing we need to do is find the coordinates of the locations that we're interested in animating on our map image and save those as a map file. So here we are in Google Maps. It's pretty standard. In addition to looking up driving directions and whatnot with Google Maps, you can also save your own maps and create maps. So I'm going to go into my places in Google Maps, and clicking on Maps here, I'm going to create a new map. I want to create a new map file that I'm going to then use to save some coordinates in. So the first location that we're interested in is Deer Valley Petroglyph Preserves. And there it is. And that's it. And I am going to add that to my map layer. Why don't we actually rename this layer while we're at it? We'll call this rock art. Save. And we may as well name the map as well. So we'll call it FOENX rock art locations. Save. All right, so there's one. And the other one is the hieroglyphic trailhead. There it is right there in Gills Canyon. And there it is. Actually, the hieroglyphs were a bit further up here. We had to actually hike up this trail, but we'll just mark the trailhead for the purposes of this animation. So I'm going to add that to map. Let's see what happens. Oh, good. It went right where I wanted it to. That was nice. So, okay. So we've got the two locations we're animating from Deer Valley to the hieroglyphic trailhead. Now what we need to do is save this. We want to export it as a Kml file, which stands for Keyhole Markup Language. The default, oddly enough, is to go as a KMZ, but we want to actually go as a KML file. And we're going to download that KML file, Rock Art Locations KML. So now we're going to go to Tableau. And the reason I'm going to use Tableau is it has a variety of map images built into it already. So outdoors, for example, nothing's showing up because I don't actually have a map of data. So I need to connect to a data file. The first thing I'm going to connect to a type of data file. Tableau desktop reads a variety of types of data. Normally we do like an Excel file or a text file, but in this case, we're looking for a spatial file, a KML file. So let's go to that file that we downloaded. You can see I've practiced this a couple of times. And so we've got the data connected. And now we're going to go over to a worksheet and create a map. So there's a variety of different types of data entries that came in that KML file, and the only thing we're interested in is the geometry. So I drag the geometry in over top of this space. It shows us those points overlaid on a map. There is one of them. There it is, Deer Valley and petroglyphs. So, but we don't need those, so we're going to pull that out. We just know that these dots, and I can actually color these dots to make them a little bit easier to see. So right now, if I edit my colors, they show up a little bit easier. There's the Deer Valley, and over here is the hieroglyphics. Okay, so now we've got a clean map with the 2 points highlighted that we're interested in. And I just need to export from Tableau this still graphic. Export an image, and we don't need any of the extra legend informations. We just need the view with the data points on it, and we'll save that out as rock art ping 2. Save. Okay, so in Resolve, we just need to bring that still graphic in and apply some animation to it, an animated path. So I'm just going to import that media, and that was in Map Graphics number 2. So we'll bring it in at the 20-second mark. And then I'm going to want this animation to be a little bit longer, so I'm going to change the duration of this clip. So we'll make it, let's say 10 seconds long. Alrighty. And so now, not much happens. There's the still graphic. We've got the Deer Valley. Let me just make this a little bit bigger. We've got Deer Valley up here in the corner, and down here in this corner, we've got the hieroglyphic park. So the goal again is to make an animation that stretches across the two and connects them. So we're going to do that in Fusion. Right now I'm in the Edit tab. I'm going to jump over to Fusion, and we'll see what happens. Okay, so right off the bat, not much happens, but we'll just briefly explain what we're looking at here. There are, in Fusion, we've got these 2 nodes. The first node is the media in, and that is this piece of this graphic that came in as a piece of media. And right now it's showing up in viewer number 2. But if I click on it and I hit number 1 on the keyboard, it'll show up in viewer number 1. And that's going to be helpful because we're going to be working on the path and the still image a bit. So it's nice to be able to see it in a separate viewer versus just in the output. So media comes in, it goes along this path, and then it comes back out the other end and lands back in the edit page. So anything that you see here is what's going to appear in the edit page. Right now, media is coming in. We're not doing anything to it, so it's going right back out. Looks the same. So the trick here is to do some things to add that animated path. So the first thing we need to do is get a color and lay it on top of here and to draw our path with. Sounds a little bit more complicated than it is. And so I'm going to merge. I'm going to bring in a background graphic. And I'm going to, that background graphic, if I look at that in viewer number 1, it's just a black graphic. So let's add a little bit of color to it. And let's just make it kind of a teal color for now, a little bit brighter. Okay, so there's that graphic. If I press this, put it back into media 1, we're good. There's our graphic. And I'm going to merge this background graphic over top of this line, and we'll see how it looks. So I think I can either do it this way. No, I have to actually add the merge in. So there's the merge. So I've got my media coming in. It's being merged with nothing. And so on the output, it looks the same. Nothing's happened to it. But if we take the output of our background graphic, connect it into the merge, now what's happening is our media is coming in. It's getting merged with this background graphic. And then the output is the background graphic completely covering it. So that shouldn't be a big surprise, but that's what's happening. So now what we're going to do is cut out a piece of this background graphic to ultimately make our path. To demonstrate that, I'm going to drop in an ellipse tool. So any node in Fusion that has a blue triangle means that it can accept a mask. So this ellipse is going to be, when I merge it over this background, it is going to become the mask of this graphic. So let's drag the output of this ellipse, pipe it in. Basically, it's going to go in as the mask, and that's what we end up with. So now I can, if I drag this around, I can adjust the width, the height, the angle. There's a variety of adjustments I can make to this shape. So that we're going to do the same thing, but rather than with an ellipse, we're going to do it with a straight line. So let me get rid of the ellipse. Now we're back to our solid graphic again. And the other polygon tool I have, or the other shape tool that I have to work with, is the polygon. So I'm going to drag that in and do the same thing. So I'm bringing that polygon in, masking it over here. Now the polygon doesn't have any dimensions to it until you draw your shape. But we are going to draw it from Deer Valley to hieroglyphics. And that is it. It's infinitely small, so I need to make the width of it a little bit bigger to show the blue underneath of the teal. So I'm going to make the border width just ever so slightly bigger, but I can make it huge, and that's how long our path, or how wide our path is. But I'm just going to adjust it by eyeball here, and that looks decent. So we now have the media coming in. I'm going to put that back into number 1. Media comes in. It's getting merged with a background, and that background is getting masked with this polygon shape, and the end result is going back out to the edit tool. So if I hop over back to the edit page, that's what we end up with, is that result. Let's go back here and do a little bit more work. Ideally, we want this to be an animation moving from Deer Valley to the hieroglyphics. So we do that by adding some keyframes to the length of this polygon. Let's see, right now the length is 1, which in Fusion Resolve terms, 1 is like 100%. It's the whole thing. 0.5 would be half. So if I was to change this length to 0.5, it's now only half as long as it can be. So what we'll do is go back to where we want our animation to start. I'm going to go about 30 frames in. I'm going to set the length to 0. And I'm going to attach a keyframe to that. And now we'll go ahead, I don't know, roughly 3 seconds. Let's just go to about 120 frames roughly, even though this is running at 24 frames per second, but this is good enough for, and we'll make this back to 1. And now as I scroll over this, I'm getting an animation. The same thing should happen in the edit page. If I scroll over here, I'm getting an animation. Back here, let's make this animation look a little bit cleaner, a little bit more normal, and you can adjust the keyframing speed with the spline tool. So over here on the right, we've had the inspector open the whole time. I'm also going to open up the spline tool. Anything that you animate in Fusion or Resolve will show up in this spline interface. And right now, the only thing we're animating is the length of the polygon. Nothing's checked right now, but if I click on the length, it shows the spline curve for that animation. And this little button here makes it neatly fit. So it's a very linear animation, which works, but is not as nice as we like it to be. So I'm just going to highlight both of our keyframes. There's the first keyframe, there's the other keyframe, and clicking on this or hitting the S key will smooth them out. So it smooths them out equally, though what I probably want it to do is to have it start a little faster, and as it comes toward the end, start slowing down. So I'm going to soften that curve by just lengthening this out a little bit. So that should be look a little bit more natural. Okay. I might even shorten this one a little bit just to, we'll see how that looks. Yeah, we'll see. So I think I'm done with the spline tool. Now the other thing I'm going to do is add a drop shadow. And let me open up this effects window. Everything we want, all the different things that we can do are available here. And if you kind of know the order or the groupings, they're easy to find. But there's just a growing list. The other thing you can do, which is really handy, if you know what you're looking for, and I'm looking for a drop shadow, you just hit Shift Spacebar and it brings up this interface, which is the same things that are right here, but I can just type in drop shadow, and drop shadow shows up. And actually, I'm gonna highlight my background tool because that's what I want to attach the drop shadow to. Again, thinking about the flow, we're moving from this media in, getting a merge to media out after we've done some things to it. Same thing, this is a flow, so I've added a polygon over top of a background, and I want to put a drop shadow on the result of the two. So if I highlight that one and bring in my drop shadow, it'll go automatically in the place where I want it to be. And there you can see it up there. It's in the path. I'm going to actually go to a single window. We don't really need both viewers right now for the moment, so I'm just going to go to the single one to give us a little bit more space to look at. And I'll say fit here, so that fills the frame. So back on the inspector, if I have the drop shadow picked, let's just pull this out just so it'll look fun. If I have the drop shadow picked, I can adjust the attributes. It comes in pretty soft and blurry right at the top. So I'm going to make it pretty sharp just so I can see what I'm doing to start with. So the distance and the angle, I think the angle probably looks okay, but I'm going to back off the distance a little bit and give it a little bit closer. Maybe the angle, that's looking okay. 5. That's good. Now let's blur it out a little bit more. Oop, too much. That looks not too bad. So now I've got that drop shadow happening. Alrighty. So the last thing I'm going to do, I think in the example, we also had a couple of circles showing up here. That's probably a little bit more detail than we're going to need for this brief demo. But I do want to show the simulated 3D effect. There's a whole set of 3D tools in Fusion. So this really could, the results of all of this could be laid into a 3D space with a camera and a light and everything and make it look really fancy. But there's also a really quick way to make this animation of this whole plane look like it's in 3D space. Actually, though, there's one thing I want to do first. Right now, let's go back to two viewers. Right now, we have, I don't need this effects library. It's taking up too much space. The polygon is just effectively a straight line. Well, it's a little bit curved because I messed it up. But it's just a line moving from one to the other. But I think it might look a little bit nicer if the line had a bit more of a shape, as if it was perhaps a football being tossed and then kind of dropping off a little bit. So I'm going to go back to the beginning, and I'm going to adjust, keeping in mind that this is a Bezier tool or spline. I'm going to adjust this one, And I'm going to make it kind of a little bit of an arc, kind of long. Go to the other one. Oh, shoot. Go to the other one here. Make it a little bit short. Give it kind of an arc shape. That feels a bit more like a tossed ball. Yeah, I kind of like that. So that's nice. All right, so now we'll add the DVE. So again, keeping in mind we're moving along this flow, I need the DVE to happen after the media comes in and gets all this stuff applied to it. So I'll select it here, hit space shift, type DVE, hit return, and there it is. Okay, so with everything in its default position, we just need to figure out where we're going to start our animation in terms of how the image is going to look and where we're going to end up. So we'll go back to 30 frames because that's where we want our animation to start. And let's try put in a few numbers here. Let's kind of scoot this over and 0.35. Let's see how that looks. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so I can see where there's Deer Valley right up there. So we need to kind of get him scooted over a little bit and moved up a little bit, and then we'll zoom in a little bit as well. Oops, I can't zoom in too much. And maybe we'll lay it down a little bit on its back. I'm gonna have to scoot it over a little bit more, kind of go up a little bit more, and then maybe that'll probably help a little bit. We can't have any of this showing or it will be transparent. So we kind of don't really love where this original graphic started. I think it's a little bit, doesn't give us as much room as I would like. So I'm going to scoot this over as far as I can. So that looks like it's not the worst place in the world to start. And I'm going to actually see if I can lay it down a little bit more. Maybe scooch it up a little bit too. That'll give us a bit more room to animate. So we're at the beginning of our animation here, roughly 30 frames. I'm going to keyframe all these adjustments that I've made. And now I'm going to go to the end of my animation, which should be around 120 frames. And you know, I'm going to go a few frames extra just to sort of have that keep moving while it's after it actually landed. So now we just got to adjust. I think I got more room here. So I'm going to scooch it over a bit. And I've got more triangle here. So I'm going to go up a bit as well. Maybe that was a little bit too far. And then we'll also, and we'll zoom in a bit too as we're doing that. So let's see how that looks. Don't love it. Again, we started so high that it didn't really give us much room to, but you get the general idea. We're kind of traveling in and we're going to land. I think I'm going to scoot it over even more at the end. So we'll go to the end of our keyframe here and have it scoot over even a bit more. That'll really sell it a little bit. So again, bringing up our spline tool, I'm going to turn off the polygon link because I don't really need that. But the rest of these, I'll just zoom out to fit everything. We'll smooth those out, and I think that's going to look pretty nice. All right. So back in the edit tool, there's our animation. I think overall this looks pretty nice, and it was pretty easy to do. And the other nice thing is it's configurable. If I wanted to change the shape of that finished animation, finished file, I can go back and adjust the curve a bit. I can grab this thing, it'd be easier. And now that the animation works accordingly. So that's kind of nice.
All right, there you have it. I am pretty happy with the end results. I think couldn't have worked out any better. And from my perspective, it was fairly clean and simple given the resources that I had available to draw from. Ultimately, easy and to create and easy to adjust. I think that's also kind of cool. But then, it's accurate, and the GPS coordinates that are specifically tied to the archaeological spots in the valley. I think that was the real winner, the thing that I'm pleased with most. So, yeah, again, overall, I think it worked out pretty good. Hope you all enjoyed it.
Meanwhile, let's go back to the beginning here. Perhaps I know there's some more rock art over here in South Mountain. And so this is bonus information, bonus round. Let's go back to the Google Maps. The Holbert Trail in South Mountain has some rock art in it. And so I'm going to go back to our maps file. And where was that one? This one here. And we're going to look for the Holbert Trail. Holbert Trailhead South. And there it is. And I'm going to add that to the map as well. Or the other thing I can do, so I could export this out, but really all I need is these GPS coordinates right here. That's what I'm interested in. Because the KML file that we originally exported that we read in Tableau is just a modified or extended XML file. So if we copy this information here and we go to the original KML file that we exported, we can add this information without having to re-export the whole KML file again. So if we take the KML file that we looked at before, that we loaded into Tableau, and we load it into a basic text editor, BBEdit, and it appears as standard XML type formatting and markup language, and most of the rest of this just defines the style, but the things that we're most interested in are these GPS coordinates and what it identifies as a place mark. So the place mark begins here. It has a name, so we here see Deer Valley petroglyph. The icons are the same for all of them. There's the real key thing is the GPS coordinates. So there's the second, that's the first one. Here's the second one for the hieroglyphics. And all we need to do is copy this information. So we'll start at place mark, work our way down to the end of place mark. So place mark starts here. It ends with the slash there. So we'll copy all of that and make another one. And in this case, we're going to change it from the hieroglyphic trailhead to Holbert. So let's go back here. We want it to be the Holbert trailhead. Copy that. Go into here. We'll change the name to be hieroglyphic trailhead. And then we'll get these coordinates, these GPS coordinates. Copy. I don't feel like it. Let's double check here. I think it's, there we go. Copy that. And now I'm noticing the order is backwards or flipped rather. One's not right forward or backward, but it's flipped from how it is in the KML file. So we'll need to pay attention to that. So to address that, so here's the name of it is Holbert Trail. Here's the old coordinates. And I'm going to copy mine And I'm going to take 33.34 and put that right here. And we'll take the -112 and copy that and put it right here. Oops, don't want to have an extra dash. That'll mess things up. And now we'll save this file. Just save it right over top of itself. And we absolutely want to save it right over top of itself, because then when we go back to Tableau, we've got the Deer Valley coordinates here. We've got the hieroglyphics here. But if we go to our data and we refresh that file that we just made, now we've got Holbert down there as well. So then I'll probably get rid of the naming. And then we could re-export this PNG, and we could make another animation we went from Deer Valley to the hieroglyphics. Now we've got GPS accurate information to go to the Holbert Trail as well, where there's more Phoenix rock art.